are in the midst of an energy transformation, truly a transformation. What kind of energy we use to power our lives, our phones, our computers, our refrigerators, and the lights in our homes is frankly being transformed. We don't generally notice where the energy comes from, as long as the lights go on when we flip the switch. But the urgent need to get off fossil fuels, to reduce carbon emissions to zero, and frankly, to shift geopolitical power from petro-dictators is inspiring remarkably innovative minds to develop novel forms of energy. Today, we're going to hear from one of those remarkably innovative minds who has developed a very creative form of energy, which frankly, when you hear about it, might sound kind of obvious. But she also has an inspiring personal story that has so many connections to what's going on in the world today. So pull up a chair and listen up. Welcome to Electric Ladies Podcast. We share stories, insights, and tips from remarkably innovative women on the front lines of corporate responsibility, energy, sustainability, and ESG-related issues. I'm your host, Joan Michelson. We talk about innovation, leadership, technologies, and careers, always bringing a new perspective. We give career advice in every episode, especially at the end, so listen to the end. But it's often kind of sprinkled throughout our conversation, too, if you listen closely. Find us anywhere you like to listen to podcasts, on our website, electricladiespodcast.com, and through my Forbes blog as well. And please pass it on to your friends. Leave us a 5-star review if you're so inclined. It helps other people find us. If you are at an inflection point yourself, looking for support with your own ESG work or in your career, especially in this time of great flux and also great opportunities, please reach out to me on Twitter and let me know. We can help you no matter what industry you're in. We see the devastating effects of climate change every day. The recent massive rain and snowstorms and wildfires just take your breath away. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, reported that in 2023, we had the highest number of weather and climate disasters costing over $1 billion in 1 year. It was 28, costing over $93 billion with a B. This is why the Biden administration in the last Congress, under the Democrats and Speaker Nancy Pelosi, passed 3 landmark bills totaling about $3 trillion with a T in funding and financial incentives, mostly to address climate change, increase the resilience in communities, and frankly, increase resilience of our infrastructure and make it more resilient to climate change while it's being repaired. And also to create good jobs and new ways of sourcing energy to power our lives. That's what's at the core of the Inflation Reduction Act, Infrastructure Act, and CHIPS and Science Act. One of the novel sources of energy that most people don't hear much about is ocean wave power. When you go to the beach and listen to the ocean, you hear, well, waves. When my guest today goes to the beach, she hears energy. I'd like you to meet Inna Braverman, founder and CEO of EcoWave Power. It's a small, publicly traded energy company founded in Israel, based in Sweden, doing business across the globe. And Inna is originally from Ukraine. She was born near the Chernobyl nuclear plant 2 weeks after it exploded and barely survived. We'll hear about that story in a bit. That has apparently been one of her driving forces in building EcoWave Power. Part of what is astonishing about Inna's jury, sorry, I'm going to try to get her name correctly, one way or the other. Part of what's astonishing about Inna's journey, in case all of that is not enough, is that she's not even a trained engineer or physicist. In fact, her degree is in political science and English literature, so go figure that one out. She started EcoWave Power at 24. She's won numerous awards and being recognized by Wired magazine as one of the females changing the world. And this week she's in New York with the United Nations She's won the Global Climate Action Award and been honored by Vital Voices with a very cool portrait at the UN. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Inna Braverman to Electric Ladies podcast. Welcome, Inna, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And again, I apologize for not pronouncing your name right, but I'll get it right.
It's a strange name for many people.
Yeah. Well, it shouldn't be for me. So there you go. The first thing I want to say is we all wish for peace, both in Ukraine and between Israel and Gaza. And I know you're in New York today, but is your company based in Israel or in Sweden?
The company was established originally in Israel. So most of the employees of the company, the engineers, the R&D, and so on, are located in Israel. Right now, we're in the process of opening offices here in the United States. So we're basically going to keep all the engineering and R&D in Israel, and here in the US, open business development, sales, marketing. So that's kind of will be the split.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, I hope your teams and your family in Israel and anybody who's still in Ukraine is safe. I have to just say this. I'm constantly amazed how people who live in countries at war are able to continue their lives like relatively normally, except when they have to run to a bomb shelter. I mean, it's astonishing to me how you guys do this. So hats off, and we all wish for the US Congress to finally pass their bleeping aid package ready and get you all some desperately needed help. So thank you for persevering.
Thank you.
First of all, right? You're welcome. You're welcome, honey. EcoWave Power's website says the company, quote, developed a patented, smart, and cost-efficient technology for turning ocean and sea waves into green electricity. Explain how it works in terms that the rest of us who are not physicists can understand.
So we basically connect floaters to existing man-made structures such as piers, breakwaters, jetties, and other types of marine structures. The floaters are going up and down with the movement of the waves. They're pushing a hydraulic cylinder, which transmits biodegradable fluid into land-located accumulators. A pressure is being built. The higher the wave, the higher the pressure, which is used to turn the hydromotor, turning a generator, and sending clean electricity to the grid. What's unique about the system is that only the floaters are located in the water, and floaters belong in the water. All the smart and expensive mechanisms that transmit actually the wave energy into electricity are located on land, just like a regular power station. And when the waves are too high for the system to handle, if there's like a big storm, the floaters go up above the water level and they stay in the upward position until the storm passes. When the storm passes, they go back into the water and commence operation.
How did you come up with this?
So that's actually an interesting story. When I finished university, where you correctly said that I studied political science and English language and literature, I was looking for a job. I was in my early 20s, and the first job that I found was as English Hebrew translator for a renewable energy company. And it's the first time that I kind of had an official introduction to the renewable energy world. And back then, I saw that solar energy is amazing and wind energy is amazing, but these fields are already kind of packed with competition. Like there's not too much to innovate, there's not too much to improve. The product is already, fully developed. It's there. And wave energy, according to all the scientists in the US alone, wave energy can provide around 66% of all the United States energy needs. Globally, according to the World Energy Council, wave energy can provide twice the amount of electricity that the world produces now. So I saw that wave energy kind of, at least theoretically back then, I saw that it holds so much potential and so much more than other energy sources. But yet, in the same time, I discovered that no company or person, no matter how much funding they had or how much technical knowledge they had, no company was able to make wave energy a reality. So it kind of really drew me to the field, knowing that there's a huge demand and need for, to make the world a better place or to produce clean energy and wave energy. And on the other hand, like, although there's such a big demand, nobody is able to do it. So, being 24 back then, with no technical background, with no money, and no contacts to any relevant people in the energy field or, funding. I said, I'm the perfect person for that, the innocence of a 24-year-old. And I really started researching, and I went to databases and like any piece of information I could find, like, why did other wave energy companies fail? And I discovered that most of them failed in the same 5 points. So I said to myself, okay, if I can come up with a product that solves these 5 points, then, then we're catching the wave. So I started like thinking on how we can make this kind of product and so on. But as I said, I had no funding, no contacts, nothing that has to do with the field. So I kind of put the idea aside as unrealistic because, how do you do it? And one day I went to a social event, and there was a guy that came and sat next to me in Israel, and he said to me in English, "What's your passion?" And I was researching wave energy, so I said wave energy. That was what that was in my head at the time, and it
Probably not the answer he expected.
yeah, no, but the answer really shocked him because it turned out that he's a serial entrepreneur that made a very large exit. And with the proceeds of his exit, he's investing in many different, in real estate, in technologies, in different aspects. And one of his investments was a surf hotel in Panama. So when he was there in Panama, he was in the hotel, sitting on the beach, watching the renovation, watching the power of the waves. He said to himself as well, there has to be something better that you can do with all this wave power other than marine sports, and started also researching wave energy. So when I said many, many years ago that my passion is wave energy, that was kind of a match made in business heaven, because like, what are the chances? It's not like saying, I like flowers, you like flowers, which is pretty common, but like actually both people passionate about wave energy. So that moment was kind of the beginning of Eco Wave Power.
I love that story, and there's just so much in that. You have to talk to people around you. You have to. I mean, I've had that happen at conferences and events too, where you never know. I mean, I could, you and I could share stories like that for 2 hours. But it's a good lesson, really, to talk to people around you and to be honest about what you're passionate about, what you're working on. Yeah, what are the chances of that happening? That's pretty wild. You said that you focused it on the 5 things that other companies failed at in providing, because I've seen wave energy before. I mean, I've seen it at energy conferences. I've seen these huge models, and they try to simulate, and even at the Department of Energy conference, the ARPA-E conferences, they have these giant contraptions that are like the size of a room. And I didn't realize that they had not gotten as far as you have. So when you say, this is just, I'm an innovation freak, so this is one of those questions that I love to ask. When how did you identify those 5 things that didn't work in the other companies? I mean, did you just like analyze where they fell off and then make your own list of 5 things, or did you find a list of the 5 things? How did you determine that there were 5 things?
So basically, I looked at all the technologies that existed back then. I saw that 99.9% of the technologies were offshore technologies. Offshore meaning 4 or 5 kilometers into the depth of the sea or the ocean. And then I started to see like what happened to them, because like, for example, there was a company called Pelamis from Scotland that got investment of $150 million for a very small device, yet it didn't work. Can you imagine, like, with $150 million, I can put wave energy on
We could find a way to make it work, right?
Exactly. Like, you definitely think so. So I started looking especially at the most funded companies, the one that had the most like resources or had the most technical resources, to see like what didn't work, like what happened, because money wasn't an issue. If money is not an issue, usually technical expertise is not an issue. You can buy the best minds or professors and so on. So I really kind of looked at it outside the box. I didn't look like on the screw level what didn't work, but like, more on the overall picture. And I saw that, for example, Pelamis, One problem was that it cost $150 million for a small device. So I understood that price here is a problem. Like, you don't need too much research to understand that it's too much. Second of all, I saw that with the $150 million investment, they decided to go and test it in the coastline of Portugal. I discovered that it broke down after 3 days of operation. So survivability, like if you can't make something stay put with $150 million, meaning there is survivability problem for this type of wave energy technologies.
Well, of course, it has to be durable. I mean, you have to be able to endure the waves. I mean, it's
but
like
you
wave
assume that for
power is
150
huge.
million, you would endure the waves, right? So if they spent so much money and still didn't endure, then maybe there's a greater problem there. So I marked the first problem was price, the second problem was survivability. Then I said, okay, if it doesn't survive more than 3 days, it can't get insurance probably. That's a big problem. Like, you wouldn't buy a house that can get insurance. Would you buy wave energy power stations for hundreds of millions that can't get insurance? Would you invest in such? No. So I understood that's a problem. Then I saw that, renewable energy sounds like something that environmentalists should support, right? Because it's renewable. But I found out that they're objecting offshore wave energy. That's a problem. Like, how do you want to go green and convince people that you're better than, let's say, oil and coal and, other polluting sources if the environmentalists are not supporting you? I found out that because the offshore wave energy technologies are connecting to the seabed, marine life get tangled in the connections, and then it's not exactly amazing for the ecological system there. And then the fifth problem was, like, from logic, is basically, if you're that far into the ocean, how do you connect to the grid? Because there's no grid connection point in the water. So obviously that's something that can be achieved, because we see offshore windmills being connected to the grid, but we know also that it costs a lot of money because it's underwater electrical cables that going from middle of the ocean to some substation on land. So I understood that grid connection will, like, is an issue. So I kind of, like, started thinking about it in simple way. I said, okay, it looks like most of the problems are directly derived from the location of the systems. They're all in the offshore. Why did they all go to the offshore? Because offshore you have the highest wave potential. In the offshore you get waves even of 20 meters and even higher. But is it a good thing? Like, theoretically, yes, because when you want to harness power, you want to harness the maximum power. But realistically, think about it, no, because is there really a device that can harness 20 meters wave height, which is kind of a tsunami wave? Or will any device that you put there will just end up overpriced and broken? So I assume that any device that, at least at the moment, that would end there will be overpriced, broken, creating no presence and on the ocean floor. So I thought how to simplify it. And I know that each country that has waves has many marine structures like breakwaters, piers, jetties, and other types of structures. So I said, why not use these structures? They're not prime real estate. They're not used for anything other than breaking the waves. Plus, the structures themselves, which we have to build to protect coastal populations, they're not good for the environment. It's cement in the water, it's stones in the water, they're changing the ecological balance. So we have to put them there to protect ourselves, but they're not good for the environment and are not used for anything other than protection. Why not turn them into a source of power? So that's actually what EcoWave Power did. And by connecting to these structures, the price went down because you can put all your equipment on land and just put the floaters in the water. The survivability went up. You don't get most of the time then got tsunami waves in the onshore, nearshore environment. Once you're connecting to a structure that is already insured, because these breakwaters are insured, you can be insured as part of the structure. So that solves that problem. You're not creating any environmental damage because you're not connecting to the seabed or to the ocean floor. And you're easily connected to the grid because most of these structures are actually protecting ports or large population density centers, which need a lot of electricity. So they always have a grid connection point in proximity. So you're also saving on the grid connection point. So that's kind of was my way of thinking about EcoWave Power.
I love that. Thank you for that, because I think that what you're saying is we overthink things. I mean, I have a PhD in overthinking. I got to tell you, I'm like a serious overthinking person. And when you break it down like that, it's really helpful for all of us to look at what we're innovating and what we're developing, and maybe even want to develop, but have thought, well, I can't because X, right? Or I don't have a PhD, or I don't have a whatever. How did you, and I'll get to your personal story in a bit, but I love this. How did you build the actual technology of it? How did you, you're not a technologist. The guy who's giving you the money is not a technologist. He's a financier. I mean, you, it sounds like you hired the talent, but how did you find them and how did you know who to hire? To
So
just,
that's
I mean,
actually,
and to come in at a level where, you know, it's like, I have an idea. Can you help me?
yeah. So that's an actually very interesting part of the story because, you know, when you're in your early 20s and you get a surprise investment, you really, you know, you don't just want to waste the funds in an uncalculated manner. So, in order to find out whether the idea works, I decided to go back to Ukraine, to the same city where I was born. And we made a competition between 300 engineers to basically see who can come up kind of, let's call it, with the closest execution to the ideas that we had at that point already. So we knew that we want the product to do X, Y, Z. We knew that it needs to survive storms and need to be easily connected to the structures and so on. We made a competition. We published there in like a famous, you know, kind of work search website, and we chose a team of 5 engineers that we kind of mostly believe in their vision, and then they kind of mostly believe in ours. So these 5 engineers basically made the initial sketches and blueprints, and then we even went and made our first wave pool testing, wave-time testing in the Hydromechanical Institute in Kiev. We were able to rent a wave pool much cheaper than a wave pool that would be rented in Israel or in the United States. The prices there are much lower. So kind of we were able to go through the initial barriers to find out on the workability of the technology for a much lower kind of, you know, price.
Brilliant. Yeah, colleges are a great place to do it. You know, in the US, a lot of times, if you want to do that, the university wants to have the IP. And so you have to be careful with that. So I'm glad that you were able to find a place there. You could keep the IP and just test it there. One of the things you said that I thought I also wanted to pull out just for all of us to pay attention to is you your concept, how can I say this, leverages the existing structures and doesn't, you didn't feel like you had to reinvent the wheel entirely. You said, well, what can I do that gets me the end result without having to, you know, be out in the middle of an ocean worried about tsunamis or having to figure out how to drop cables, you know, 800 miles or kilometers to get to, you know, connect to the. So you used what already existed to facilitate the end result that you wanted to achieve, which is capturing wave energy, right? And also the I love that they were already covered by insurance, so you didn't have to worry about that. That's good. I like that. Insurance is a big issue in this world.
Yeah.
We can talk about that for about 2 hours. How did, like, you were you came at this through your personal story from, and I alluded to in the introduction. Tell us a little more about your story, because I was very abbreviated, and also how it got you specifically to wave energy. I mean, I understand if you're, you know, in the midst of a crisis, of an environmental crisis that is blamed on fossil fuels in any kind or any kind of energy source, that you want to do something better. But why wave energy of all things?
So I'll start with my personal story. So I live in Israel right now, but I wasn't born there. I was born in Ukraine in 1986. And 2 weeks after I was born, the Chernobyl nuclear reactor exploded on the 26th of April. And the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, of course, was the worst nuclear disaster in history. So I was one of the babies that got hurt from the negative effects of the explosion. My mother approached my crib. She looked down. She saw me pale, blue, not breathing. And my mother, she's a nurse, but she got so stressed that she forgot she's a nurse. So she ran to my dad screaming, oh my God, the baby is dead. Like, what do I do? And my dad looked at her like shocked and he said, "You're a nurse, do something." Thank God she remembered she's a nurse. And then she went and gave me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation until the ambulance came. And I don't remember any of that because I was very young, a baby. But in all the family meetings, gatherings, holidays, they would say like, "Wow, you remember that story? Like, it's so cool. You got a second chance in life." And I was growing up, even after we moved to Israel when I was 4 years old, I was growing up with this feeling like, "Wow, I must be really special. Not everybody gets a second chance in life. I should do something good with it." And that's the reason behind going, first of all, to study political science, because the city that we moved to in Israel, it's a very small town called Akko in the north of Israel. It's not a city of possibilities, let's say it like that. So you don't really have a chance to make an impact, no matter how much you want to do so. So I thought that through going to study politics, maybe, I can do or make peace in the Middle East. Again, the innocence of a young person. And when I
could use you this week, that's for sure. Go ahead.
yeah, they can call me. I'm open.
You're available. Go
I'm
ahead.
open to help for the peace discussions. But like when I finished the university, I found out that there's no lineup of politicians that is waiting to hire a young lady straight out of university. It surprised me, but I had to go and find a job until the politician understand what are they missing. And as I said, my first job was as English Hebrew translator at a renewable energy company. And why really I went for wave energy? Just because I saw a field that has huge demand, that has huge potential positive impact on the world, and that nobody is succeeding in. So that's kind of was like for me, I don't know, maybe a feeling of destiny. Here I got a second chance in life, and maybe I can make something for the first time in the world. So maybe my second chance will be kind of worthwhile by whoever decided to give me the second chance. So that's kind of what really drew me to that. And the funny thing is, I don't know, like. Maybe it's kind of fate that I was supposed to go to this field, because when you Google my name, Inna means in Greek running water. So
wow.
that's a pretty cool connection.
I love that. Yeah. By the way, I should tell you, my maternal grandparents were born in Ukraine, in Kiev and right outside of it, and my paternal grandparents are from Latvia and Lithuania.
Mm.
So I feel and I'm Jewish, by the way, so I have multiple connections to your story. My parents were huge fans of Israel. They were there many, many times. It's interesting. Not every 20-something-year-old wakes up and says, I guess I've been given all this opportunity and privilege, and I should do something with it. Where does that come from? I'm serious, because there's a lot of people who are just spoiled brats or whatever in this world, right? What was the impetus for your feeling? I know you said you had you're close hearing about your close brush with death, because obviously at 2 weeks old, I don't expect you to remember it. Yeah. But like, was there a moment where you said, X is happening, or is it because of what was happening, where Israel has always essentially been under assault since it was founded in 1948? What was the impetus for your feeling a responsibility to do more with who you are?
So, first of all, I don't think I could have afforded to be a spoiled brat, because our family went through a lot of hardships. If it was as Jews in Ukraine that did not always, belong, whether it was when I was 4 years old and we immigrated to Israel, and there was a law back then in former USSR that you can't take any of your belongings, or more than, I remember, $300 or $400 per person you can move. So with $300-400 per person for a family with two grandmothers, mother, father, children, and so on, like, it's not too much money to be a spoiled brat. So basically my family came to Israel and started from zero. My mother, who's a nurse, was cleaning houses in Israel because she didn't have the language, and she couldn't support her degree, like, to practice medical. So I think that kind of the more hardship you kind of overcome and the more difficult your life path is, maybe the more you become a fighter, the more you want to succeed, want to get out, want to make a change. So kind of enduring that together with my personal story, I think it maybe created really a person that doesn't give up. And, throughout the way, as a young person, as a female, in a very masculine kind of field, which is the energy field, where there's only like 5% in the world executives in the energy industries are women. So like you hear all the time, no, you cannot do it, no, you don't belong, like you kind of feel, no, you're not one of us in a way. And as a fighter and as somebody that really believes in what I'm doing, like you want to prove all the naysayers, yes, I will, yes, I can. So I think that's a big driving force.
Oh, I think that's great. By the way, you're in very good company on Electric Ladies podcast, because I have over 400 women who are doing energy innovation in one form or another, either through literal energy transformation or automotive, transportation or fashion or whatever. I mean, in every possible field. So
they need to know
and
that
I know
they're
you
extremely special, because again, 5% of the world's energy executives are women, and only 1% of the executives are in the STEM sector, like overall STEM sector. And women only get 2% of the worldwide VC funding. So if you have 400, that's a big part of the world.
Exactly. And that's in part why I do it. I mean, I just spoke, I don't know if are you doing anything with the Export-Import Bank of the United States? Maybe you have to wait till you have an established US office. But I just spoke a couple times at their big annual conference. Mm-hmm. And I did a session on women entrepreneurs, and pointed that out. I mean, actually last year it was 1.8%, which is just kind of bleeping astonishing. I mean, the talent that's lost. I mean, just think if you hadn't had that opportunity, what would be lost. So thank you for your perseverance. It's a good lesson for all of us, to not take no for an answer, or not take you can't for an answer, right? I want to get an example. I want people to understand what the technology you're birthing here really does. So I saw a statistic, and I don't know if it's on your site or where the heck I saw it, no, it was on your website, that EcoWave Power currently holds more than 400 megawatts in its project pipeline, enough to provide clean renewable energy to an estimated 400,000 households worldwide. So talk about that. Explain how the power that you are creating from waves is providing the lights in this room, or the power for this computer, or for your phone, or somebody's refrigerator.
So basically, as I said, the floaters in the water, they're moving up and down, and they're creating pressure, and this pressure is being transferred into an electrical power. Every developed city, country has, of course, an electrical grid. So it has different grid connection points. So any type of renewable energy source, whether it's wave, wind, solar, tidal, they basically connect to an existing grid connection point and goes to the distribution network. So for example, we have a power station working in Jaffa port in Israel. So the people that live in the nearest proximity to the port, or the port himself, when they're turning a TV, a washing machine, street lighting, the immediate energy source for them, as long as it's available, of course, it's the power of the waves. So it's pretty simple. It's as easy as putting a solar panel on your rooftop. It will just connect to your regular grid, and then you'll get energy in your house from the sun. Same goes with waves.
So is that 400,000, providing power for 400,000 homes per what? Per day, per year?
No, so when you're talking about 400 megawatt of installed capacity, it's meaning basically that the peak capacity that it can provide is 400,000 households, according to a calculation that 1 kilowatt needed for a house per each hour, so 24 kilowatt hours per day. basically they're providing different energy amounts according to the wave height. So if the wave will be super low, you will produce less than that. If it's very high, you will produce the full capacity. The good thing about wave energy, though, is the fact that wave energy is actually the least intermittent source of renewable energy, because of course all renewable energy depend on Mother Nature, but solar, which is an amazing source, energy from the sun, you have the night, you produce zero. You have cloud coverage, you have pollution like in China, you produce zero, because the sun can go through. Wave energy, you can have lower waves, higher waves, but usually, especially in suitable locations, you will have constant movement. So you can produce around the clock. So one of the most positive things actually about wave energy, according to all the research and scientists, is the fact that it can serve as base load for other renewable energy sources. Because for the grid, it's very dangerous. Like, for example, if in the morning you're producing for 400,000 people and at night it's zero, like that's a big load change on the grid. But if you combine, let's say, wave energy with solar energy, with wind energy, then you don't have this like on and then suddenly off. And then it will create really kind of stable, clean energy output. And although I'm not like objective, of course, I'm a big fan of wave energy, but I do think that the solution for the world's problem is combining all renewable energy sources together. Because that's really the only way that we can kind of, rely on Mother Nature and on different times of wind, wave, sun, and get to 100% environmentally friendly world.
Yeah, I totally get. I'm in all of the above girl too. Have you figured out the types of energy that your technology or wave energy in general is replacing? So like if somebody, when your clients, I'm curious who your clients are, but what kinds of companies or whatever, but when they buy your power, what are they not, what was it replacing? What were they getting it from before?
So there's actually a very interesting calculator that can show you as a person or as a company, like what is the energy that you produced from a clean source is replacing. So you can measure it by amount of cars taken off the road, kind of, like saying, okay, you produce this amount of power that is equivalent to this amount of emissions by car. This is equivalent to this amount of oil or coal barrels. Like you have a calculator online, so you just put the amount of kilowatt hours that your device or the device in the city produced, and then you find out exactly what it took out in terms of pollution.
Oh, I see. So it's just available for all kinds of things. It wasn't something that you specifically did. Tell us a couple of questions, and I'll get some career advice from you that I like to get for everybody. But tell us about some of the projects that you have. I saw that you're in Turkey and Spain and Israel and here in the U.S. as well. I say here because I'm in Washington, D.C. area. You mentioned that you're opening offices in the U.S. So tell us about some of the projects that you have.
So we have a working project in the port of Jaffa in Israel, which we recently launched. It was connected to the grid in August 2023. And we executed it in collaboration with EDF, the French national electrical company, Électricité de France. And 50% of the funding came from the Israeli Energy Ministry, which recognized our technology as pioneering technology. Why I'm excited about this project is because as an Israeli, I'm very proud to know that we are the first wave energy company that ever connected to the national Israeli electrical grid. It's the first PPA, power purchase agreement, that was signed between a wave energy developer to a grid off-taker in Israel. So, that makes me very proud. The next project that we're planning to launch, we're launching this year. It will be in the port of LA. We have a collaboration with Alta Sea in the port of LA. They're kind of a blue hub for development of ocean-related, sea-related projects. We're waiting, our equipment is already there in the port, being in stationary display. We're waiting to get the last license from the Army Corps of Engineers. And as soon as we get the license, we can install it and have our first US project, which we're very, very excited about. And we're currently also developing a first commercial project in Portugal. We already got the licensing, and we're planning to start construction this year and finalize by the end of 2025. What's also exciting is that for the US project, we just signed also a collaboration and partnership agreement with Shell MRE, which is, of course, a big player in the industry, in the energy industry.
I love that. One of my guests, episode actually I aired today, called it what it sounds like you're doing with Shell, radical collaboration. I love that. It's really creative. Well, they need all the help they can get, frankly. When I got my MBA, we did a week at Shell in London, so I got to know a little bit about what they're doing several years ago. You mentioned, I want to ask you just a little bit something again about innovation and then get some career advice from you. In one of your talks that I saw in preparing for this, you talked about that sometimes knowing a lot about something, you can miss innovations that are possible. And this kind of goes back to the overthinking thing a little bit, but explain that. You said something about if you don't know so much about it, you can step back and see solutions or something. Talk about that a little bit and what you were saying in that what do you see in that about not knowing so much, coming at something maybe with a bit of innocence and naivete?
I think that sometimes people that are experts in a certain field, for example, let's say an engineer, a mechanical engineer looking at a wave energy device, sometimes they get so preoccupied with with kind of the smallest bolts and screws and things in the system that they miss the big picture. They miss the thinking outside the box, kind of. And when you're coming from outside the industry, you're kind of like, you're not looking at this small bolt, you're looking at the overall story. Like, it's great that all the bolts are perfect, but if it took you 100 years to make them perfect, and I don't know, and $150 million in funding per year or per device, the whole story doesn't make sense. So I think really sometimes when you're coming from outside the field, you're able to see it with fresh eyes, with eyes that are not influenced solely by the technical aspects of that item or technology.
That's interesting. So when you know a lot about something, there's two schools of thought. Malcolm Gladwell is, the 10,000 hours. To me, that seems obvious. You see trends really quickly. But what you're saying is the trends are a good thing, but not to get so focused on the size of the nozzle at point A that you miss, the proverbial don't get stuck in the trees when you need to look at the forest, simile analogy. I love that. That's great. Thank you. I could actually talk to you about this stuff for about 5 hours, but I'll resist the temptation. And I'm a native New Yorker, though I'm in DC now, so I'm sorry I'm not there, and I love Vital Voices. So kudos to you. I do stuff with the UN Sustainable Development folks also. So maybe hopefully I'll run into you, and let me know when you're in DC next as well. But before I let you go, I like to get some career advice for mid-career women. And I joke that I will always be mid-career until I'm not on the planet anymore, because I'm always looking to be challenged by my next big thing, right? I know that EcoPower is new, fairly young, and it's kind of been your whole working life, which I think is very cool. So I'm going to switch this up a bit, and I know that you're from what you've said, you're in your 30s, from what you've said publicly, not to call that out, but just to give it perspective. So what kind of advice would you want to share to a woman who wants to use her education and her experience, who wants to excel, is ambitious, wants to make money, but she wants to make a difference? She woke up in that same space that you did.
So I think that she has to kind of have two factors. One is passion, and two is persistence. Because if you're truly passionate about something, if you really feel that you have this like amazing opportunity to change the world, then you would also persist, because you won't give up your dream that easily. And being in wave energy, I always say that passion is the greatest renewable energy source, even stronger than the power of the waves. So that's my advice.
I love that. Your passion is just as strong as the wave energy, right? And it's never going to stop, right? The wave energy lives on well after we do, right? That's cool. I love that. Is there anything else any final thoughts before I let you get back to your UN festivities there?
Yeah. No, I think you asked very interesting questions. It was very interesting discussion. I think we covered most of it.
Okay, good. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Electric Ladies podcast. Inna Braverman, hopefully I said it correctly this time, of Eco Wave Power. Truly a remarkable innovation, and we wish you good luck with it as well. So what do you think of eco wave power? I mean, are you like, when you go to the beach, are you going to see wave power? Are you going to like look at it differently now? What questions do you have for Ina? Send them to me on Twitter at Joan Michelson, or find me on LinkedIn and tell me there. Send me any questions for Ina as well. And you may win a complimentary 30-minute coaching session with me. And please subscribe to our mailing list to stay abreast of our talented, amazing guests like Ina, our articles, and career advice. You can subscribe on our website, electricladiespodcast.com. I'm Joan Michelson. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.